Ihr Völker der Welt, schaut auf diese Stadt.
Ich bin ein Berliner. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate.
Among the other statistics of Scientology, well, some that are not very published, because the only one that David Miscavige wants to publish is the number of square footage from the new buildings they bought. Now, how is that a viable final product of anything except perhaps a landlord or a property owner? And incidentally, the organizations are made to finance those new buildings. They provide the manpower, the resources to transform, let's say, a degraded, dilapidated $3 million building into a $15 million one. So the organization gets all the trouble, and what do they get in return? Less than nothing, because the church owns the building. They are the official landlord, or one of the corporations they control is a landlord, and they mortgage the building, and the church is stuck with the mortgage. This is done by design to ensure that every organization is privately bankrupt, so that nobody can ever prosecute a Church of Scientology because they're all bankrupt. And of course, the church can invest that money and earn higher income and higher interest rate than the mortgage would be. So they become richer at the expense of all the work done by the local people. And of course, who controls the finances? I don't think I need to tell you. Some numbers the church doesn't say. The number of refunds. Refunds, according to L. Ron Hubbard and also common sense, indicate that people who are dissatisfied ask for refunds, because if people are happy and have been promised if they've been delivered what they were promised, they don't ask for refunds. Well, the Church of Scientology has an estimated $150 million in backlog refunds. And the reason it is so backlogged is simple. When someone pays for the services to an organization, 3/4 of it goes to Sea Org reserves and will never come out. So when a refund request is received, the organization must provide all the money, even though they only had 1/4 of it, and of course they're the one who have to pay the rent and all the other expenses. As a result, contrary to any policy and common sense, the Church of Scientology puts its refund request on a backlog basis, a bit like back bills. And it is estimated that the current wait period for most orgs is 3 years. In other words, if you ask for a refund today, unless you make a threat that they feel threatened by, like going to the media and they feel it's going to impact their PR or their income, you can expect several years before you see your money, if at all. Another thing, in Italy it's even worse. In Italy, if someone decides to ask for a refund, they put someone on the meter, evaluate, invalidate, calls reads that don't exist, and say, oh, you're connected to a suppressive group, and that suppressive group we are suing. So of course, until the matter is settled out of court, we cannot entertain your request for refund. So when the matter is solved through the court, which in Italy takes 20 years, then we'll entertain giving you a refund. Of course, we hope you're dead by then. To wrap up about the false statistics of David Miscavige. Now, one of the functions of the leader of the church is the acceptability and the PR image of the church. Well, that acceptability and PR image is at the lowest point in its history. There are over 2,000 antagonistic web pages on the internet. There are over 50 forums that dedicate themselves almost exclusively at degrading L. Ron Hubbard and or the church. Has David Miscavige done anything to try to remove the tarnishing on the repute of L. Ron Hubbard? The answer is simply no. Has he done something to remove the tarnishing of his image? The answer is a definite yes. He put out a Freedom magazine to claim that he was the leader of the church, and incidentally his name is in that Freedom magazine a lot more often than L. Ron Hubbard's own name. And he defends himself as being a very productive person. But what does he produce? If you really look, the product of the Church of Scientology, by its own policy and by common sense, will be clears and OTs. Well, clears and OTs have gone down the drain since David Miscavige took over in the 1980s, and right now it's not only at a level of zero, it's in the negative range. In other words, they are canceling clears and OTs more than they are producing them. Right now, David Miscavige goes around and holds events, and I tell people, how many of you are clear? And then there's a show of hands. Well, guess what? 90% of you are false attest. Aha. And of course you want to cave people in, because even if it was true, you would tell that privately. And also, to give someone an almost right item is suppressive. That's actually what makes people sick, per any form of tech and common sense. So because now you have 90% of people that are out ethics, now you start to tell people, you give an item that is the item for 90%, and now what about the 10% for whom it's a wrong indication? Of course, those people don't count because, of course, according to David Miscavige, the state of clear is worthless. In fact, he goes around with a list of 7 criteria that obeys, incidentally, on the hidden data line. And if you read the policy on the hidden data line, you can see it's exactly a hidden data line. And L. Ron Hubbard has always said the one behind a hidden data line is someone who alters a technology or invents it. Now, David Miscavige claims that people cannot go clear in a past life, and he claims that there are some special criteria. Of course, he himself does not meet this criteria, but he can certainly feel comfortable in undeclaring people. Same thing, he undeclares people clear. People are told to redo soul knots. Why? Because he claimed having had a super understanding of soul knots than anyone has ever had, including L. Ron Hubbard himself. So therefore, all L. Ron Hubbard bulletins are being rewritten, modified, so that people behave perfectly. And if you don't fit the mold, then according to David Miscavige, you're out ethics. In other words, everyone needs to fit neatly into the little square pegs they're given, and if they don't fit in that little square peg and mold, they're out ethics. And everyone needs to be the same. In other words, he wants to make people spiritual clones of himself. Finally, David Miscavige earlier promised that they would deliver OT 9 and 10 once every org on the planet was a St. Hill size. Then they realized that some orgs were so behind and so far from that image that it was impossible even in a century to bring them to that level. So therefore he invented the concept of ideal org, because all you have to do is get a flash in a pan and then get the ideal org according to some really silly criteria, and it's only for a week. That's what they did with Tampa. They ordered all public from Flag to flock to Tampa for that 1 week, and the SATs went up the roof, and then it was an ideal org. And of course, once that week was passed, everyone went back where they belonged, and the SATs collapsed and have never recovered. And he has the nerve to call that an ideal org. And about OT 9 and 10, when they will be released, well, guess what? OT 8 was deliberately altered from the original materials of L. Ron Hubbard, because you see, they call it new OT 8, but you see, OT 8 was never released. So why should there be a new and an old OT 8 when it's never been released? Well, it's very simple. The new OT8 is the altered version of the original one. The original OT8 had 3 steps in it. So what they've decided to do, to make money of course, that's the only reason, is we deliver the last step of OT8, which of course should have been delivered after the first and second step, but we deliver it so that it runs very quick and people finish OT8 in 1 week, when Elrich said OT8 was a long level. He said that, and it is in a telex that Elrich sent to the FSO. He says OT8 was a long level. And now Miscavige makes it a short level because short levels bring more money. So OT9 is simply going to be simple. OT9 is going to be the first step of the original OT8, and OT10 is going to be the second step of the original OT8. That's according to my sources. So that's quite amazing. So now they're trying to sell 3 OT levels when there should have been 1. And of course, run in the wrong sequence, but of course, David Miscavige's mind is built upside down. One important point about the directing of cases, it has long been proven through hundreds and thousands of hours that people who are out ethics on tech lines seek to push on their PCs the very action that they themselves need. Now, what is being pushed on in the church right now? Sect check and the pulling of evil purposes. Well, that should tell a little bit about who is pushing that. And indeed, I have reports from my sources that David Miscavige folders who be loaded with rock slams and evil purposes on L. Ron Hubbard. He definitely felt that he was slighted by L. Ron Hubbard. Of course, he goes around with that piece of paper that allegedly says L. Ron Hubbard saw him as a good friend. Perhaps this is authentic, perhaps this is not, because you can never tell with those guys what is true or not. But this is beside the point. Even if L. Ron Hubbard once was sympathetic to David Miscavige, I can assure you the other way around is definitely not the case. As someone told me in my face, and he was there, and I know that I've known that person for over 25 years, that person told me that in a briefing, David Miscavige indicated very clearly that the green volumes were completely obsolete and worthless, and they had to be rewritten, and that the red volumes by L. Ron Hubbard were completely out of sync and badly written, and he had to rewrite them. And this is why, if you look at the current catalog of the golden age of tech knowledge, which is supposed to encompass the totality of knowledge in the philosophy and the application and the technology of Dianetic and Scientology, you have all the books that he saw fit to add to the list. You have all the tapes that he saw fit to add to the list, which is most books and most tapes. But you have no tech volumes, no HOBs. Why? Because they have to be rewritten. And of course, they will all be signed L. Ron Hubbard. Of course, L. Ron Hubbard, the person, would have never seen any of those bulletins. But of course, L. Ron Hubbard, the copyright items controlled and owned by Miscavige, would have of course signed them. And of course, Miscavige is now a ghostwriter for L. Ron Hubbard, and L. Ron Hubbard, of course, is no longer there to express his disagreements. Thank you for listening to this briefing. I have more briefings coming on the subject of David Miscavige, his technical alterations, and his lies.